Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to lesson 8 of today's session for the course we're going through. We're inside of the course entitled Prosperity, that was written by Charles Fillmore. I'm glad that you were able to join me this morning. So we're going to jump right in for the sake of time. For those who are reviewing this at a later time, we welcome you also. Lesson 8 is entitled God will pay your debts. So you have the handout. The handout that you have this morning should be the actual student guide, and we're have all the information you need is on pages 45 through 48. So our objective this morning is to enlighten you on the spiritual perspectives that are related to debt. We'll emphasize the role of divine intervention, consciousness, and ethical considerations in addressing your financial obligations. So we got about 17 points that I'm going to cover, some of which I'll dive deeper into than others. But if you are listening to the playback, if you get the chance to listen to the audio book of this particular chapter, you will be looking for these things that we will be covered in there. So this chapter encourages you to harness spiritual principles to cultivate a mindset of abundance and to navigate your debt challenges with wisdom, integrity, and to trust in the divine guidance. Some of the key points we're going to cover today is the law of mind in true forgiveness, trusting versus distrusting people when it comes to debt and truth, beginning the process of forgiveness as it's related to forgiving the debt of others, self-forgiveness. We're going to look at the mental resolution of debts, forgiveness as a bill collection strategy. That is, if you have individuals who owe you, then how to move through that in another way. We're going to look at divine debt clearance. We're going to talk about the effects of debt on health and its remedy, God's role, or source's role in modern business for those of you who have businesses, installment buying. We're going to look at the merits and dangers of that, the significance of prompt payment of obligations. Now, that's really important that we make that a practice. Now, I've been just as guilty as others in that regard. So I'm being slowful in taking care of some of the things I need to take care of, but I wanted to shift that. Attitudes towards creditors and debtors. So these are some of the things we're going to cover on this morning. And then inside your handbook, there's about 17 questions that you can go through at the end of the lesson or sometime this week to ensure that you are really grasping this information that we're working through. So the first thing I want to look at this morning is inside of lesson 8, we're going to look at the what law of mind is observed when we talk about true forgiveness. What law is in place? So forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. We find that in Matthew 6 and 12. In these words, we find that Jesus is expressing an infallible law of mind, the law that one's idea must be dissolved before another can take place. So you have an idea, it must be dissolved before you can replace it with another. If you have in your mind any thought that someone has wronged you, you cannot let it in the you cannot let in the cleansing power of spirit and the richness of the spiritual substance until you have cast out the thought of the wrong, have forgiven it fully. So that's why it says when you stand praying, you want to forgive. You may be wondering why you have to fail to get spiritual illuminations or to find the consequences of spiritual substance. Perhaps the reason is that a lack of room for true thoughts because our thoughts are filled with other thoughts that we need to be letting go. If you're not receiving spiritual understanding you feel you should have, then you should search your mind. You should ask, am I holding unforgiving thoughts? Thoughts are things. This is important that you know that as we affirm that our thoughts are things and that they occupy space in our mind. So thoughts, although they're invisible, they take up space. Okay, they have substance and form and may easily be taken as permanent by one who is not endowed with spiritual discernment. So every thought is fleeting, but yet even though it's not in front of mind, it still occupies your mind. So fruit, our thoughts bring forth a level of fruit that is according to the seed that is planted in the mind, but they are not enduring, meaning your thoughts that you have are not enduring, but they're still there. But you have to know what thoughts are you holding, what things are running in the background. So your thoughts are alive and are endowed with you as the thinker with a secondary thinking power. What I mean by that is the thought entity that I am, okay, that entity forms, assumes an ego and begins to think on its own. So it actually thinks on its own. So here's a good example of that. Your subconscious program, your the program that you run, when you're thinking, when you are thinking, when you are observing something, that program kicks in. 85% of our day, or no, they say 95% of our day is running the program, the things that we put in. So when you are thinking, you are running the program. When you are imagining something, you're running the program. So when you're not running the program or actually paying attention to, like, if you're driving, who's driving? The program is driving. So what we have to be mindful of is to be present to the fact that our we have this program running behind the scene. So you may be thinking thoughts that um, are detrimental. So you got to change the program. And the way you change your program, and we're going to talk about this at length at some point, is through rehearsal, through holding intentional thoughts, not forcing, but being aware of thoughts that you are thinking, that are behaviors, reactions that you have that aren't necessarily um, the consistent with what you are desiring to manifest. So you may be thinking poverty thoughts, even though you have all these affirmations. So that means in the program you still have some things to get rid of. So, but we're talking about forgiveness in this regard. So if you are holding unforgiveness, not just in the way of debts that people owe you, and that's not saying that you need to release them physically or from their obligations, but we're going to talk about a way to clear yourself so that's where you're not harboring any kinds of negative feelings or thoughts that can get in the way. So that's important. You want to keep your vibrational frequency of attraction free and unencumbered. So why should you trust rather than distrust people? He talks in this chapter about trusting people versus not trusting people. Now, in this particular chapter, he talks about God will pay your debts, and what he's basically is saying is we take on these principles, aligning with truths, then source in all actuality is repaying your debt. So if you tell me what kind of thoughts you are holding about yourself and your neighbors, I can tell you just what you may expect in the way of health, finances, harmony in your home. Are you suspicious of your neighbors? If so, you cannot love and trust in source if you are hating and distrusting the men. You can't have those two operating at the same time. We're vacillating between. So we have to learn how to trust people. And then what I mean by that is, even though I trust you, but if I know you have a history of certain things, I know how far I can trust you. So I don't put myself in a situation where I'm anxious. I don't put myself in a situation where I'm wondering if you're going to bring me hurt or harm, or make good on something that you may owe me. So when we talk about the two ideas, love and hate, or trust and mistrust, they simply cannot both be present in your mind at one time. Two things cannot occupy the same space at one time, on the same level, in the same dimension. So either you are holding thoughts of love or thoughts of hate, thoughts or you're trusting or being mistrusting. So that's really important, to make sure that one must be absent if the other is the thing that is desired. Trust other people and use the power that you accumulate from the act of trusting other people and trusting source. We find that there is, in this chapter, he talks about there's a magic in it. It works wonders. Love and trust are dynamic, vital powers. So we want to work those things together. You have to ask yourself, am I accusing individuals of being thieves and fear that they are going to take away from you something that you may own? So if you're going through life wondering, if somebody's going to rob me, if I'm going to, if, everybody you encounter and you asking, will I get repaid, or what is this person's intentions, you're going to find yourself um, holding a place where that freedom of that power to come forward is not able to. So you got to be always asking yourself, am I forgiving? Am I making space for trust to be actualized? Okay. He mentions that when you have these kinds of thought that generate fear and terror in your mind, and they fill your conscience with darkness, there is no room for sources light of protection. So what we want to do is begin to build walls of love and substance around ourselves, and we send out swift, invisible messengers of love and trust for our protection. They are better guards than your policemen, your detectives. So it's just being in a position where you learn to trust. Now, if you're around people you can't trust, you need to move away from them. You don't continue to hold court with individuals who are not trustworthy. If you find a person to be not trustworthy, move away from them. If they owe you something, forgive them. And a lot of times, worrying about the debt, unless they are deliberate and intentionally and acknowledging it, but you can kind of sense where somebody is putting you off. So you want to have a trust for people, a trust that people are good at heart, and have good intentions. So all of this works together because you've spent a vast amount of your time engaging people, and a lot of times the blessings that you have are coming from someone else securing your services, and same way with someone extending to you credit. Okay. And that leads us to the third thing he was talking about in this particular chapter. He's talking about, is there such a thing as debt when we talk about truth? He mentions that we shouldn't judge others as regards to their guilt or innocence. He goes on and he talks about we need to consider ourselves and how we stand in the sight of source or father for having thoughts about another's guilt. So, the scripture says, as we forgive, Father, to forgive us our debts as we forgive the debts of others. So forgiving is a big thing. Now, I'm not saying that if someone owes you something that you need to begin to go and release people, but those people that have been on you for years on some things, you might want to consider, I need to chalk this up. So that way you don't be holding that space that can ultimately have you feeling a certain way. So you want to consider that. Okay, you want to begin your reform with yourself. That means much to do to if you're an individual who enjoys an understanding of mind and the laws, you got to understand that the law starts with you. Okay, it tells us he who knows himself superficially, this person is just has an external personality. So we got to get to know who we are. What are we made of? We want to know that we want to be filled with the light, with spirit, and so that's important. So when we talk about debt, he mentions in here, um, all men who do not conform to ideas of morality and religion as being sinners or transgressors. And so you don't even want to focus on that. And when we talk about sinners, we're talking about people that misses the mark. And there's people out there like that. They're lacking something. Uh, um, those people, you must know, source does not deal with face to face. Okay, our work in any demonstration is to connect with God. So if you really want to manifest things, you have to have a connection with God. That's why early on in this teaching, we were talking about the need for us to align with, to be in righteousness, to seek first. Because as you seek to be in constant relationship, and that's where religion is kind of different. When we look at religion, many times what we're looking at is people have a form of godliness, but really not aligned with the power of that. What I mean is, like, we go to church on Sunday, we go to church on Wednesdays. Is not so. When you're spiritual, it's a 24/7. It's an everyday thing. It's not that you become so spiritual that you know worldly good, but you don't become so worldly that you are not any of any spiritual influence. So you got to have a balance. And what I mean by that is we are divine spiritual beings, and we need to carry ourselves accordingly, knowing that where we are, source is. So constantly having this communion with source. Okay, and so when we have communion with source, we know that source is able to provide, and that means that we're not really. A lot of times we press people who owe us because we not only not because they owe us, but because a lot of times we extend to people things that we ourselves need. And so what we find ourselves, instead of having, we're not giving out of a place of abundance, we're giving out of just enough, and we need that to be replaced. And so I say that you have to be very careful that you extend to people things that are really part of what is your necessity. So we have to be careful with that. But when we talk about debt, in source, there's no debt, and because there's an abundance. But because we live on this plane, we have to learn the power of forgiveness to keep us in alignment with this particular truth. Okay, so where must we start when we talk about forgiving our debtors and our creditors? First of all, we have gratitude that we have creditors, who individuals who can extend to us the goods or services prior to us being able to actually pay them. So we have to always be mindful of how appreciative you were when your creditor, or when someone extended that to you, and so you be mindful of that and the commitments that you made. In this chapter, he talks about our forgiving all men includes ourselves. When we talk about that passage, you must you also forgive yourself. Let the finger of denial erase every sin or missing of the mark or falling short that have charged up against yourself. Pay your debt by saying to that part of yourself which you think has fallen short. You say something like, "Thou art made whole, sin no more, lest a worse thing befall thee." Then loose him and let them go. That's scripture. Treat the missing of a mark as a mental transgression instead of considering it to be a moral deflection. So if you're late on your bills, don't look at it as that it's a moral character thing. It's a financial thing, and you want to acknowledge that, but don't go into that world spin of you are your credit score. And if you have a poor credit score, then you can begin to feel poorly about yourself. You want to deny in thought all tendency to the error way, and hold yourself firmly to a Christ spirit, a Christ consciousness, which is your divine self. And if you can always stay aligned with your divine self, all that is thine is mine. Okay, and all that is mine is thine. And so if all that source has is yours, then source has the ability to outsource to you. Where we run into problem is we have what is God's over there that we're trying to access, and what is ours right here. And then so we that's why I like the concept of the tie, which I'm going to talk about, in that it reconnects the idea that everything that I have belongs to source, and source has given me 90% of that which I have to do the things I need to do. And that's a trust. That's a connecting the two, and a oneness of being, not having two piles or two pools, but one pool, one stream. So we want to know that. So you have to be very careful uh, with you when you forgiving your debtors and your creditors. You do so with the understanding that even though someone owes you, that source will get it back to you. That way you're not so stuck on the individual. Okay, how can we forgive ourselves for holding others in our debt? Okay, scripture says, shall I be in debt as long as I hold debts against others? Okay. We find this to be the law of mind. A thought of debt will produce debt. So the more you're thinking about who owes you, it will produce the concept of you owing others. So as long as you believe in debt, you will go into debt and accumulate the burdens that follow that thought. So the power of the mind. So this chapter, the one thing about this book about prosperity is to talk about holding yourself accountable. Whoever has not forgiven all men their debt is likely to fall in debt themselves. Now, when we talk about forgiving our debt, that we usually talk about those who have erred against us. It's easier to forgive someone who has done something against us than to forgive someone who owes us something. But it says for anybody who are indebted to you, you want to release them. You release them, and there's a way of releasing them, but at the same time, uh, keeping the covenant that is made that they owe you something, but from another perspective. Um, so whoever has not forgiven all men, their debts is likely to fall into debt themselves. Does this mean that you should give um, um, receipted bills to all those who owe you? But I mean, should you write it off? No, it doesn't mean that. What what you should do, he says he in his book, is not be erasing the thought of debt from your mind. Um, First, deny in mind that any man or woman who owes you anything. If necessary, go over your list of names. So you might make a list of names of each and separately and sincerely forgive the thought of debt. Okay, you're not forgiving them of their physical debt. You're forgiving them from the thought of debt. Okay, which you have been attaching to that person's name. More bills may be collected in this way, according to this particular principle. Um, People will begin to pay what they owe you when you send them this forgiving thought. Okay, they have a commitment. So you look like this: they have a commitment to you, not a debt to you. Okay, because if you say there's a debt, that you say there's a deficiency that they don't have, but they do have, and they have access to it. So you want to let go of the debt, but also you celebrate the commitments that has been made. Okay, you have gratitude that this person has made this commitment, or and likewise the commitments you make to you're not indebted, you're committed to. Okay, so when you look at your bills, don't look at them, oh, this is debt, this is commitments. Can you see that? When you say debt has a more of a negative connotation to it, but when you say this is the commitments, it takes on another field. Debt is a contradiction of the universal equilibrium, and there is no such thing as lack of equilibrium in all the universe. So there's a positive flow that's available to you. Therefore, in spirit and in truth, there is no debt. So we have to begin to wrap around his minds around, I have no debt. Say that right now. I have no debt, but you do have commitments. And so I have no debt, but I made good on my commitments. Okay. And that's integrity right there. So debt is a contradiction. We don't have debt, we have commitments. Okay. Their debt denotes that there's a lack. That's really important. The true disciple realizes his supply in the consciousness of omnipresent, universally possessed abundance. Spirit substance is impartial and owned in common. It belongs to all of us. Nobody owns it. We all have access to it. And no thought of debt can enter into it. So we want to know if everybody has access to it, then no one has debt. But we want those who are committed to us to one come into this realization itself. But even if they're not coming into the realization, that which you have lent them or given them, that comes back to you in many other ways. Just because it's, what you give to this person, um, doesn't always mean it's going to come back directly from them. Indirectly, it may come in another way, but that does not absolve them of what they owe you. There's a commitment. So it says, give and it shall be given to you. Press down. So press down, shaking it, meaning more will come back. So we have to be careful how we are looking at this concept of um, giving from the perspective of when we lend to someone, when someone borrows from us, when someone asks for us, that they don't go into debt. So when someone gets something from you, look at it more as a commitment. You let them know, I'm releasing this commitment to you, versus in a debt, because now people become indebted to you, and then they sometimes people will dodge you. Okay. There's only in this chapter he also talks about the only sure way of getting out and staying out of debt. Now, this is something that we all need to be mindful of. How do we get out of the mindset of being in debt and the actual experience that many of us are indebted because we were not walking inside of the practices? Debt exists firstly in our minds, and in the mind is the power and the proper place to begin to liquidate your debt, to make good on your commitments. These thoughts, or the thought entities, must be abolished in mind before their outer manifestation will pass away and stay away. So you have to know that we have to wrap our minds around that there's no such thing as debt, and that there is resources available to liquidate, to make good on your commitments. The world can never be free from the bondage of financial obligations until men erase from their minds the thought of mine and thine. That generates debt and interest. That generates. So when we see that all that I have belongs to you, it's like a couple. When a couple is in a relationship, it's although it may not be a pooled pot, but there's a feeling of, we have more together than we have separately. And so when you get into what's mine and what's thine, that's like two houses divided. But when you look on a greater all mankind, so we understand that we live in a day where people store up, or people have this abundance. Like it's said that a small part of society has a larger portion of the wealth, and it has been set aside that way or established that way by what they call ownership. But when we say that the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof, and that we are just stewards, this whole concept that we have of individuals being able to amass this large wealth and put it away and put it under their name, that is not a true depiction of how source operates. What is available to me is available to you. So you can't look at God in the same way that you look at man. You know how man is able to some people have it and some don't. In source, there's really no have nots unless they are not aware of the principles. But once you learn these principles, then you find yourself not really moving in debt, but you may take on commitments, but you are not seeing it as your a debt ratio. Look at it as more of your commitment ratio. Can I fulfill the commitments that I make? So that's important. So we want to analyze the thought of debt, and as you do so, we'll see that it involves the thought of lack. Okay, it's like light and dark. You can't have debt unless there's a conversation of lack. Debt is a thought of lack with absence at both ends. Okay, the creditor thinks that he lacks what is owed, and the debtor thinks that he lacks what is necessary to pay. And so I'm in debt. I borrowed it. I'm in debt because I didn't have it. Instead of looking at it at the time that I made the commitment, I didn't have access to it, but I did have access to it by way of the commitment that I made through this individual. So, and then when we make commitments, that's how I like the term commitments in debt, because sometimes debt keeps you thinking that of lack, where I'm going to get it. But when you think of commitments, you know that you have the ability to take care of it. So debt is a thought of lack, okay, and it's important that we move away from that. That there is an error at both ends of the proposition, and nothing in the middle when you have debt. Okay, with this being true, it should be easy to dissolve the whole thought that anyone who owes us or that we owe anything to anyone. We should fill our mind with thoughts of all sufficiency, okay? And that there is no lack, there can be no debts. Where if there's no lack, there can be no debt. So, what we find here is that the way to pay our debts is by filling our mind with the substance of ideas that are the direct opposite to the thoughts of lack that cause the debt. So we want to have the one truth is there is no debt. I have no debt. So say that right now. I have no debt. However, I have commitments. Individuals owe me nothing, but they have commitments to. Okay, commitments, not debt. So change that. Okay, how's that for you? Anybody want to say something about that? To have, I don't see any hands here. Okay, so we're looking at having commitments. Can you see that? Don't go through and add up your debts. Go through and identify your commitments. What is my commitment to this company? What are my commitments to this person? And then this person's, so if I have a commitment to an individual, I also celebrate the fact that they had the wherewithal to extend to me what we call credit. Okay. But at the same time, we don't want to get into this debt kind of relationship because that's saying there is lack. So let's work on getting rid of the word debt and using the word commitments. That's important. So let me look at how he explains forgiveness as a good method of collecting what is owed you. If you are owner of a business or you have to collect on things, if you've extended credit towards someone, he talks about in this chapter forgiveness as a good method of bill collecting. Ideas of abundance will more quickly and surely bring what is yours to you than any thought you can hold about debt. So just having the abundance thought versus thinking my wealth is based on what people owe me, but the abundance of what can come from source is easier to get oftentimes than what can come from a particular person. So we want to have an abundance thought, okay? That what is yours to comes to you, okay? Thoughts that you can hold, that you're in a consistent connection with source, and you also want to hold thoughts about debtors discharging their obligations to you. Sometimes the discharging obligation is that means that they make good on it. You want to see substance everywhere and you affirm it, not only for yourself, but everyone else. Okay. So you see wealth everywhere. I was looking for something in my house, so I pushed my couch back and it was a bunch of coins. And I was like, how do these coins? I guess they slip out your pocket. And so I had hidden wealth. And so we have to, wealth, $1 million is a bunch of pennies. And so when you see a penny, when you see a dime, quarter, nickel, that's part of your wealth. So don't discount it as, oh, that's just that. That's an aside. So you want to see substance everywhere and you want to affirm it, not only for yourself, but for everyone. Everyone has access. It's more than enough, especially a firm abundance for those whom you have held in the thought of owing you. So if someone owes you something, you send them loving thoughts that they have the ability easily to make good on their commitments and that eases the way you're looking at them. If especially if you have a large sum that is owed you, so you want to just pray in their behalf, intercede on their behalf. Thus, and by doing this, what you do is you help them pay their debts more easy, and not just to you. Let's say if you know that you have children, they're indebted. You praying or you affirming, okay, of the abundance flowing in their life, that they can make good on their commitments, okay, and that helps them to pay their what they will call debts, but we call commitments, more easier than you merely erasing their names from your book of accounts. So you don't erase their names by saying they owe me no more, but it's you look at it differently, okay? Because if they made the commitment, they should um, take care of the commitment. Now, if a person comes back to you and say, I made this commitment, but at this time I'm not able to make good on it, and then based on where you are, you may be able to release them from it. And so that's for you to decide and listen to the Spirit. So you want to help pay the other fellow's debt by forgiving him of his debts and declaring for him the abundance that is already. Like if I owe some, if someone owes me, in my prayer, I forgive their debts. I mean, I'm working in alignment with their commitments, that source is releasing to that person that which is it would is that would assist them in making good on their commitments. So you're taking it back to source. You don't take it to the person. Source bless that person that they may make good on their commitments, because it makes them feel good when they're able to make good on their commitment. Okay, so the idea of abundance will also bring its fruits into your life. Okay, let the law of plenty work itself out in you and in all your affairs. Okay, the law of plenty. Okay, the law of abundance. You want it to work out in your life. This is the way that the Father forgives both of us, you and I, for our debts, okay, not by canceling them on his books, but by erasing them from his mind, okay? So the reality is still there, but the commitment is still there, but the indebtedness is not. Source remembers them no more. The Father is in everywhere, is in the everywhere present Spirit, in which all that appears has the origin. So where source is, there is abundance. So there's no lack. So source has no need to hold you in debt. Source releases. And many times we don't even have to become indebted to source, like by saying, source, if you do this, I'll do that. So now you made a commitment versus aligning with source that all that is thine is mine. Okay, so now I have to get in the right position to be able to access that. Okay, that's important. So we don't bargain with God. We come into alignment with God, with source, with God. That's important. So, how does Source or God forgive our debts? Okay, how does His love pay for our debts? And I'm using the phenotype of a male, but how does Source love pay our debts? Okay, in this chapter, he talks about to remedy any state of limited finances or ill health that has been brought about by worry, because many times most of sickness and diseases is a result of anxiety and stress, and most of us stressors are because people are overextended or indebted. So we have to begin to look at this. Okay, and the way you remedy this state of limited finances or ill health that has come as a result of this is you must begin by eliminating the worry that is the original cause. So what is the original worry? Okay, and you got to eliminate it. One must be free from having these kinds of thoughts. You got to free your mind from the burden of debt before debt can be paid. So you don't get rid of debt by thinking about debt. How can I extinguish this get debt? As long as you are in that mindset, you're allowing lack to increase. Okay. Many people have found that the statement "I owe no man anything but love" has helped them to uh, counteract that. So you can say, I owe no one anything but love. Now I have commitments, but I owe no one nothing or anything but love. And that's what we have. Because if you don't realize, when you have a commitment to some, or when you owe a debt to someone, and you're having a hard time taking that debt, it can get in the way of the relationship, because you feel like I owe this person something, and it gets in the way. But when you say, okay, I have a commitment, but I owe no man anything, because they have released you and you release yourself from that, but you hold on the commitment. You release yourself from the thought of debt, being indebted. Okay. So when you say I owe no man anything but love, many people have found that it has helped them to counteract the thought of debt. So as you use the words, as you use these particular words, what happened is your mind is opened up to an inflow, okay, of divine love, and you usually begin to faithfully align with that, and then forgiveness begins to come forth. um, he's in this chapter, he talks about these kind of people have built up a strong consciousness of healing and enriching power of source love, that they could live and work peacefully and profitably with their associates, even though they have a commitment. So so when you are working with someone and there's um, a sense of indebtedness, it gets in the way of that relationship. Okay, so we want to be constantly releasing individuals and affirming that they have the ability, because they can tap in. So when we talk about the statement, I owe no man anything but love, it does not mean that you can disclaim owing your creditors money, or to try to evade the payment of an obligation. So you don't use it in that way. The thing that is denied here is the burden or the thought of debt or lack. That's all you're denying. You don't have that burden, but you are affirming you have that commitment. Can you guys get with that? That's important. Okay. The thing denied is the burden of the thought of debt or lack. So we are moving from having debt to we have commitments. Okay. Say that with me. I have debt and no, I mean, I have commitments and no debt. Okay. I owe no one anything. I have commitments that I make good on. And that's how you do that. The work of paying debt is an inner work, having nothing to do with the debts already owed, but with the wrong thoughts that produce them. So a lot of time we had to borrow because we were inside of wrong thoughts anyway, and that exacerbates it. So you have to learn to put these things in perspective. When one holds to the right ideas, burdensome debt will not be contracted, because you will have commitments, but you will not be contracting debt. Debts are produced by thoughts of lack, impatient desire, covetousness. When these thoughts are overcome, our debts are overcome, forgiven and paid in full, and we are free from them all the time. Okay, so that's important. Uh, debt produce thoughts of lack. Okay. So how do debt and worry about debt affect our health? We know that it causes you to stay up late, it causes you to sleep, it causes you to become depressed. It can even cause you to work. Your thoughts should at all times be worthy of your highest self or your fellow man's a source. Okay. The thought that most frequently work ill to you and your associates are the thoughts of criticism and condemnation. So you want to free your mind of them by holding the thought. There is now no condemnation in Christ. When I have a Christ consciousness, I have no condemnation. I hold no man in contempt. So you want to fill your mind with thoughts of divine love, justice, peace, and forgiveness. So we're talking about a lifestyle here. We're talking about you can't take a break. When you take a break from being spiritual, divinely spiritual, and you slip into the humanness, then you begin to stack up all kinds of stuff that will get in the way of your. It's not something you can lay down. You have to This is your cross you must bear, that you are a divine spiritual being, that you are working spiritual principles at all times. Okay, so that's important. So you want to fill your mind with thoughts of divine love, peace, justice, and forgiveness. This in itself will pay your debts of love, which are the only debts you really owe. Okay. Then see how quickly and easily and naturally all your outer debts will be paid. Okay. So it says, perfect love casts out all fear. And so if you are loving perfectly, there's no fear associated with, no fear of I won't be able to take care of my commitments, no fear that the person is thinking contrary or contradictory about you. When we begin to walk in this oneness of being, we enrich ourselves when we know that source is everywhere and the resources of source is everywhere and available to us. So that's important. So we got to stop worrying about how I'm going to pay my debt. No, you can ask source. You want to say, I thank God for the commitment, the credit that was extended me, and I hold fast to my commitments to take care of it. And I'm able to do that because source supplies my every need. Okay, that's important. Um, so that the in this chapter he talked also about source having a place in business. So if you own a business, the way is not open for you to pay your debts by having a business. Surrender them to so if you have a business, you want to surrender it to source, and along with all the doubts that come with debt when people are indebted. So you don't see the individuals who are borrowing from you, individuals who are getting credit from you as indebted to you, but they have commitments to your business. Okay, and you send prayers to them that they are able to make good on it because they're connected to source. Okay, that's support. That's important when we talk about our how we're doing business. That's important. In the kingdom of truth and reality, ideas are the coins of the realm. So the idea, so when you have a witty idea, a witty invention, something you can take to the market, you know that source is setting you up for a way for there to be another exchange. So you don't have to give your wares away. You can gift some of them, but you can just know that others have the ability. I have a service or a good that someone desires. And you pray in advance that not only do they desire, but they have the wherewithal to secure my services. And if they're doing it through you are able to extend credits, then you make sure that's part of your prayer for them. You forgive them any debt that they don't feel like they have debt to you, but they more align with they have commitments to you. You see the difference there? So that's a powerful thing this morning. I'm letting go of my debtors and I'm praying for those who are committed to me. Thank you for clarity. Can we expound on why we owe love? Because love, source is love. And so we say source is love. So we are love. So we do. So love covers a multitude of sin, of missing them. When you miss the mark, it's the love of source that keeps you coming back and not feeling ostracized. And so when we have and someone who has a commitment to us versus a debt to us, it's easier to love them through a commitment versus a debt, because if they're not making good on the debt, it's so easy to slip into feeling as though, oh, they just gonna disregard. But when when you understand that they have a commitment and that they'll make good on it because I have prayed in their behalf, I love them. So it's, if you don't love someone, it's difficult to pray for those who you don't love. So that's why you have no enemies. You have, so does that help, Carolyn? I hope that helped. That when we talk about love, we're not talking about this physical thing, this emotional thing, but the ability to choose to express um, source through us as its highest and greatest good. Source loves everyone, and source expresses his love not from an invisible place, but source expresses its love through us, the acts of kindness that we show. That's why when people, if you release someone of their debt, let's say you totally release someone of their debt and their commitment, so that person may say, "Thank God," because they are now experiencing the abundance of source. So that's important. Um, what else he says here? He says you want to begin by thanking God for your freedom from debt burdened thoughts. This is an important step in breaking the shackles of debt. The funds to pay all your bills may not suddenly appear in a lump sum, but as you watch and work and play and pray, holding yourself in the consciousness of God's leadership and his abundance, you will notice your funds begin to grow. Here a little, here a little, there a little. And that's why I say as money goes out, money comes in. As I retire my commitments that others have to me are retired. Okay, so for with the increase will come added good judgment and wisdom in the management of your affairs. Now you may say, I overcommitted myself, and I'm not going to make that kind of commitment again, or I'm going to be patient instead of running down and getting high interest credit. I'm going to wait until my credit is established to the place where my loan will be at a more reasonable. So we do live in a world where you need credit extended to you, because nobody walks around with a large sum of money. And a lot of times it's not the wisest thing. Some people say I only operate by cash. So I was off the grid for a long time and paying for everything by cash, and that just crashed my credit. Because when it was time for me to purchase a home, I had to look at what my credit score. But because I had no credit cards and I was paying everything cash for everything, but when you have credit, credit is a form of cash. It's a form of abundance. So we have to learn how to balance it. Credit does not mean debt. When you get credit from someone, it's not a debt from someone. It's a commitment to someone. Can you guys get that? Having a commitment to, so credit is commitments. So you want to move away from the concept of indebtedness. Okay, that's important. There's merits and dangers to installment buying. So if we're talking about that, in this chapter, he talks about that. Do not yield to the temptation of easy payment plans. You have to be careful with that. It can have you overextending. Any payment that drains your pay before you receive it is not an easy payment. Okay, no, if your pay is gone before you get it, because all these easy payment plans, it can be more depressing. So don't allow false pride to tempt you to put on $1,000 front on $100 salary. I like the way he had put that. There may be times, he says, when you are tempted to miss paying a bill, or in order to indulge in a desire for other things. This easily leads to you being in a habit of putting off paying, which fastens the grip of debt. Or it says you're not integrous in your commitments. So you want to be careful of putting off. So that's why we pray before we begin to execute, or we begin to operate according to financial matters. We bless the whole, and then we give the portion that belongs to source. Now, check this out. All of it belongs to source, but the portion you give it ties what is yours still back to source. So where what you have is yours to operate, you'll never run out. Okay, because source is a God of more than enough, but you have to tie yourself to source by showing source all that I have is thine, and to prove it, that which is mine, I'm taking a portion of it and giving it to you. We're going to talk about the tithe more so, and I think because we don't understand the tithe, we have found ourselves in a situation where we don't really have access to all that source has. Okay, so that's important. So when we talk about installment, buying, you got to be careful because you can easily overextend. Okay, and then you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul. You don't want to get into that. So we must always be aware that the divine mind within you is much stronger than the desired mind of the body. That is, turn it, turn. You want to turn to the divine mind and affirm that the law is my shepherd. I shall not want. I shall not come out. I shall not lack. Okay. Okay. So you say, the law is my shepherd. I shall not want. Okay. And by saying that, you're saying that the thing I desire, I shall get. Okay. And you do things in divine timing and divine order. So what's the importance of paying your obligations promptly? That this is because when we hold off on paying our obligations, what we're saying is that in a subconscious way, I I don't want to let this go. I may need to take care of something else instead of first things first. You want to bless your creditors with the thought of abundance as you begin to accumulate the wherewithal to pay off your obligations. Keep the faith that they had in you by including them in your prayers for increase. So when we talk about increase, I want to increase. I want my borders expanded so that I can make good on my commitments. So you begin to free yourself at once by doing all that is possible with the means you have. And as you proceed in this spirit, the way will open to you to do more. For through the avenues of the spirit, more means will come to you and every obligation will be met. Okay. It's through the spirit. So you want to make sure that you free yourself by making good on your commitments. And then if you can't make the entire commitment, say the commitment was to give someone $50 a month on a commitment made, you go back to them and say, this month, at this present moment, at this day of payment, I have this today, and the other will be coming your way. That lets them know. They'll probably say, thank you. When you get it, give it to me. Okay. Versus not giving them anything. And then in their mind, they begin to slip into lack. Oh, I'm not going to have that which I thought I would be getting. So we got to pay our debt, obligations, not our debt, but our commitments in um, in a prompt manner. So I encourage you. That's like even when it comes times to giving. I tell people it's so easy. I've been guilty of this in my life, that when it's, if you don't give what you're committed to be given towards the ministry or a ministry, before you know it, you've taken care of all your other debtors or the people you have commitments to, and you forgot to prime the pump. You forgot to give to the golden goose from which all the golden eggs come. So you forgot to feed the goose. And so what you have to know, that I do it properly. So you make a list. These are who have to pay this month, and this is the order of payment. And it always starts with, one, you take care of source. Two, you take care of yourself. Make sure you're putting something aside for yourself. And then three, you go through and take care of your obligations with those who are you have commitments to. So, what kind of thoughts should you have towards those individuals who are extending you credit, or to those? Now, I'm not saying you're indebted to, but those who are extended credit. So, what kind of thoughts should you hold towards creditors? And how about debtors? Those who are indebted to you, those who you extended credit to, and those who have extended credit to you. If you are a creditor, you want to be careful of the kind of thoughts you hold over those who are in debt to you, or those who are you have extended credit to. So we get rid of the word debitor, debtor, because the debtor gives the influence of lack. Okay, so you're saying that that person indebted to me has lack. You don't want to say that. Just say commitments. Those who you've extended credit or commitments to, credit to, they have a commitment to you. So you want to avoid the thought that they are that the person who owes you is unwilling to pay, okay, and is unable to set pay. Get rid of the thought they ain't gonna pay. Because you ever let someone gave something to somebody and you say, I ain't gonna get it back, and you don't get it back. So you've already said that that person is not trustworthy. Then why don't you just give it instead of saying, "Okay, I'm lending you this $100." Once you saw, and but if in your mind you say, "I ain't gonna get it back," why don't you just say, "You better off just saying, here's a blessing for you," because now you're setting yourself up for a blessing. But if you say, "Okay, I'm gonna give this to you," but in your mind, I'm not gonna get it back, you just set yourself up, okay? Because you're thinking ill of the person and you're sowing a seed of lack into their lives. So, an obligation in their life. So, if it's something that you feel you know that the person can't give it back, then you give it to them, okay? Or don't 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 enter into that commitment with them believing that they're not going to be able to make good on it. So you want to avoid that. So one thought holds a person in dishonesty when you say that. So you're saying that they're dishonest. So you want to be careful with that. You want to cultivate a genuine feeling of love for the person you are extending credit to, and you respect their integrity in spite of all appearances. Okay, you don't go into judgments. Okay, a lot of times when people ask me for something, I don't like people to go into, can you give me this so I can do this because of this? No, it's either, Greg, do you have $10 that I can borrow from you? I don't need to know why you need to borrow it. Either I have it to give. If you want to borrow it and go to the boat, if I got $10 for you and you're going to the boat, that's on you. Okay. I give, so it shall be given. Okay. I um, it says you'll be the head and not the tail. You'll be the lender and not the borrower. So it's okay to be the lender, but make sure you have the right mindset in lending. That you, as soon as you lend, you release them. They're not indebted to you. They have a commitment to you. You know, you may not, you don't have to say to them they're not indebted. You say, you know, I look forward to you making good on your commitment. Okay, that's how you deal with that. So you want to declare abundant supply for the people that are receiving credit from you, okay? And it helps them to prosper. You want to pray and work for their good as well as for your own. For yours is inseparable from theirs. Know that what source is mine and what's mine is source. And if what's mine is source, what's yours is source. So really, there is not a shortage. Okay, you want them to get the same mindset. Pay your commitments to individuals, and they will pay theirs to you. This is the rule. Make sure you're taking care of your commitments with the same measure that you meet. The same measure will be meted to you. Come on, you can't expect people to be blessing you, but you're not blessing others. You can't expect those who you've got commitments to be happy, and then for you to be happy when you have commitments from coming from others that they're not taking care of. So, what is the dominant belief um, that has he talks in this chapter about depression and what's causing depression in the world and how it must be overcome, and our part of overcoming the depression when it comes to the financial depression, we have to communicate that source is of God or a source of more than enough. Okay, the world cannot be free from this bondage of debt and interest until it starts to see the kingdom in operation. So we have to begin to operate accordingly. The credit system that we are currently in today. The question is this credit system, the world credit system, responsible for worldwide debt? Now, he talked about this in his book. He says that there is a legitimate commerce that is carried on by means of what is called credit. Credit is a convenience to be used by those who appreciate its value and are careful not to abuse it. So, credit is good. For to do so, if we are abusing it, it ruins us. It ruins a nation. Many people are not equipped to use credit to the advantage, and they are likely to abuse it. So part of what we have to do is we need to have classes on financial integrity. Well, not integrity, but how to handle financial matters and increasing your financial intelligence, understanding how credit works, and if we do that, we need to give that to our children. Then they'll be better off as they grow into adults. Few individuals are familiar with the intricacies of sound credit systems and often assume obligations without being certain of their ability to meet them. So we have to begin to education, financial management, education, educating individuals on financial matters. And I don't think the church, for the most part, has done a great job in doing that. So we want to include, it's financial literacy is the word I was looking for. So that's a piece we may want to have. And I think I'm going to teach a beginner's course on financial literacy. It'll be probably a hour session on financial literacy, something we used to teach to our individuals who are in the workforce development. If they are unemployed, looking for employment, we teach financial literacy also. So the other thing he talked about in this chapter was our faith in supply justify us assuming obligations and trusting that we shall be able to pay. So that's we have to do that. We have to look at that from the perspective of a right balance. Just because supply is out there, don't mean you go and overcommit yourself. No one should assume an obligation unless that person is prepared to meet it promptly and willingly when it comes due. So if you don't have access to uh, that payment, so don't buy it by faith that I might have a job by the time my first payment is due. No, that's not the way you operate. Okay, one who knows source as its unfailing resource can be assured of its supply when it's needed. This is true. Then why should we plunge into debt when we are confident of his daily supply? See, that's the other side of the sword. Give us this day our daily bread. Will give us what is needed for today. Overextending ourselves based on God to come through somehow is not the way. If you don't have faith with works, if it's not being shown in your life now, if you can only have enough faith to have your debts retired by working a job, but then you're going to overextend yourself beyond your job. Now you're creating this vacuum of I have debt. So we always want to live according to our faith level. Live according to our trust in what source will do. Okay, that's important. There's no creditors or debtors in the kingdom. Okay, in the kingdom, there's no debtors or creditors because we forgive. If you are in the kingdom, you need no longer be burdened with the thought of debt, either as debtors or creditors. So, under this divine law of the kingdom, there's no reaching out for things that are beyond your present means. There is an ever increasing richness of consciousness that's coming from the certain knowledge that source is infinite and unfailing supply. Source is infinite and it's my unfailing supply. Outer things conform to your inner pattern, okay? And riches are attracted to the individuals who live close to the unselfish heart of God. Your environment is made beautiful by the glory of the ever present presence of Source. So that's why it's important that I started this conversation with that we have a right relationship with Source. I and the Father are one. That we operate as Source operates. Ever forgiving. Remember the prodigal son? He spent all he had and he came back. Source, his father, forgave him. Okay, had forgiven him from square one, and his father embraced him and had enough for him without even compromising the other sons. But the other son was looking as though there's a pot over here for me and a pot over there for my brother. My brother is taking his pot, now he's returning about to get more out of my pot. No, there's no such thing. There's one pot. Source allocates to all of us out of the pot. And there's no such thing as a deficit or decreasing, diminishing amount that's in that pot. So, what is the prayer, the value of prayer in gaining freedom from debt? So, how does prayer fit into that? There is but one way to free yourself from debt. And in this book, he talks about that is the desire to be free. So, you have a desire to be free. followed by the realization that debt has no legitimate place in the kingdom. That is, as I forgive, so am I forgiven. Okay, so there's no debt. I have commitments, but I don't have debt. So changing your mindset about that. That is important. As you work towards your freedom, you will find it helpful to have daily periods of meditation and prayer. Don't concentrate on the debts or the spoil of your prayers by constantly thinking about debt. So you'll spoil your prayers by constantly thinking about the debts you owe. Think of that what you want to demonstrate. I want to make good on my commitments. Okay, then that takes the lack out of the conversation because there is no lack. Okay, so you want to make good on your commitments. When you pray, you want to thank Source for its care and guidance and ability to provide plenty. That's why we call him as Jehovah Jireh. Source is my provider. We call him Jehovah, um, the one that more than more the one that's more than enough, the many El Shaddai, the many breasted one. Okay, so you begin to call Source by its manifestations that uh, relinquish your idea of debt. Okay, so we want to do that, and you want to say things like, I am no longer anxious about my finances. You say this: Source is my all sufficiency in all things. Okay. The spirit of honesty, promptness, efficiency, and order is now expressed in me in all I do. You can say something like, I am free from the limitations of mortal thought about quantities and values. This superabundance of riches of Christ's mind are now mine, and I am prospered in all my ways. So we got to change our debt conscious. And so there is no debt. I have commitments, but I don't have debts. People have commitments to me because but they have no debts to me because I have forgiven them their debts. Now we usually talk about debts of when people have done something hurt or harm to us, but we're looking at debt this morning from when people have requested that we extend credit to them, and so we want to, as soon as you extend credit to them, you affirm the commitments that's made, and you release the idea of a debt to be paid. There's a commitment to be made good on, not a debt to be paid. So that's what this chapter is about. There's some questions there that I'm gonna have you, as you play not this back, but as you listen to chapter 8 or read chapter 8. These are some of the things you want to be looking for and addressing. All right. Is there any questions as before we get ready to move on? We're right at 10 o'clock. We had a late start today. So I'm going to look here and see if there's any questions. So I'm going to ask you guys, I'm going to go around, there's a few people in the room, and I'm going to ask you, what's your takeaway? So think about it. What did you come away with this morning through this teaching? So let's look at, I see Al, I see your hand. You have the mic, Al. Okay, you can unmute yourself.
Hello.
Hey, what's happening? Good morning.
Hey, everything is good. I really enjoyed the teaching. I just wanted to get a better clarity on you said that we can forgive people, I guess, let me get it right. We can forgive people of their debts but still hold them to their commitment. Is
Right.
that correct?
Good. So you forgive them of any of their consciousness of owing you a debt. Because for you, okay, from your perspective, nobody owes you anything because there is anything that you give to them, source gets it back to you. So let me start with that. So um if I gave you $50, I lend you $50, you don't owe me anything because my next part of that is I acknowledge the commitment, and I also affirm that source provides for you through you the ability to make good on your commitment. So we take debt out. So even if you get something from me, you're not getting it from me because of you have a debt because you have lack. Let's say you need $50. Like I had in a situation where somebody was out of town and they couldn't get access to their money. They needed X amount of dollars. They called me and I didn't go into why did I had it. They evidently they knew it, source gave it, and I gave it to them. I gave it to them. I didn't look at it as though they owed me, but I knew that they had a commitment to me. And I knew that because it was commitment is different from them having a debt, because debts are difficult to displace. So I automatically say, Father, forgive them from any idea of debt. I forgive them for any idea of debt. I affirm the commitment that has been made. I have gratitude that I have the ability to extend it. So it's not that I'm okay. If you have made a commitment, it didn't say you're erasing the commitment. You're erasing the debt. Does that help?
Yes, I understood you. I got you. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
So that means okay. So it's okay to extend credit. Now, sometimes let's say if you know a person, you've been seeing, you know a person been struggling and they just in a position right now where they need $50 to pay their light bill and they say, can you give me $50, lend me $50 to pay my light bill, but you know they're struggling right now, but you're in a position where you can say, you know what, I'm gonna bless you. If they say, they come to you, Al, can you lend me $50? I need to make sure my phone stays on. And you may say, okay, I know this person been struggling. They've been between jobs. They're paying, hustling here, hustling there. You can say, I'm gonna do one better. I'm gonna pay your phone bill for you. So that automatically takes any commitments they may have to you. It takes the feeling of indebtedness to you, and it really puts them in a prosperous. They feel like they're ahead because not just ahead temporarily because you loaned them something, but they're permanently ahead because you give it. So this we have to know. We have to know when to give and when to gift it as a commitment. Okay, so all of us need to learn to do that. Okay, that's good.
That's good. Thank you, sir.
Awesome. Hey, Ma, I see your hand. There you go. You got the mic.
Okay, good morning. Good morning.
Mhm.
I got Al's question, but I got one.
Okay.
Now, if someone want to borrow something from me, money, I'm looking for it back. So
Okay.
what am I missing?
You're not missing anything, but I just want you to have the right frame. Okay, here's the right frame in mind. First of all, you say you thank God that you're in a position to lend because now you are operating according to the Bible that says you should be a lender. You should be lenders and not borrow. So you move to the lending part of the equation, and you can only lend if you have abundance, right? So you agree with that?
That's given.
Okay, no, no, okay, lending. Okay, so here's what. Stay with me. So if someone borrows something from you, and you're able to lend it to them. You're not giving it to them. You're lending it to them, right?
You right.
Because if I said, Mom, can you lend me? Uh, Mom, can I borrow $50 from you? And then you say, I'm not going to lend you $50, or I'm going to give you $50. That's a whole different conversation because now you're
Yes,
not expecting anything back. But your initial question was when someone has borrowed something from you, you don't see them as indebted to you because when you say they owe me a debt, you're saying that there's lack in the universe, lack in their lives. And if it's lack in their lives, it's lack in your lives. So that's why you want to say that person, when someone borrows something from you, they are not indebted to you, but it's a commitment they have to you. And then you can, so if they say, can I borrow $50 from you? Then you can say, what is your commitment? And then they may say, I'm committed to paying you 25 on the 15th and 25 on the 30th. And then you will say, okay. So there's a commitment there. The conversation is about commitments. It's not about debts because you don't want to, we as kingdom believers don't want to use debt conversations because there's no such thing as debt. That's an illusion because source provides your every need. Okay? But that doesn't mean that because you um, forgive them their debt, what you're doing is forgiving them of the concept of debt, but you still hold them accountable for the commitments because they made the commitments. Does that help?
Yes, that helped. But you speaking on lack,
So,
lack. If they got it the first time, what make you think they gonna have it the second time?
and if you're thinking that way, mom, then you should either give it to them or say, I don't have access, or you just say no.
I just say it's not in my budget.
Okay, right. Okay, right. You can say that, and you're saying that based on this person has a history of
Not giving,
not
not
repaying,
returning.
right, and you let it be.
Okay, gotcha.
Okay, good.
Have
Uh,
a good day.
you too. Oh, good. Carolyn, I see your hand. You got the mic. Okay, you can unmute yourself, Carolyn. We're not hearing you for some reason. There you. Okay, that's mom. Let me mute you. Al is muted. Let me see, Carolyn. Try it again, or let me see here. I don't know if you're on your phone or what, but I'm gonna dial you to see, Carolyn, so if get that question. There you go. Are you there now, Carolyn? Okay, I'm gonna dial you. See if I can get you that way. Hey, Carolyn. Hey, okay, good. I don't know why we can't get you in on that way. What's your question?
Okay, first of all, let me be grateful this morning. Thank you so much for this teaching.
Hmm.
And I'm especially grateful to Source this morning because you know how sometimes us all we'll have little questions, we think they're little questions, but little things that kind of get biased and we just let go. All right, in your teaching this morning, one of the things that Source is bringing to me is how we stay aligned with spiritual laws, right? And just in your teaching on the word debt and commitment, that opened a whole new image to me. Um, and what the real, when I asked the question, what's the difference? Speak more on
Love.
how we owe love.
Hmm.
And as you were speaking, the scripture came to me. Love is a commandment. We are commanded to love. And
Hmm.
that's why love, we owe no man nothing but to love him because that is a command for us. Love is the fulfilling of the law. There's no law against love. So that was one thing that was clear to me. The other thing was when we use words, how important our words are. When we think of debt, it is a burden. It is a load, and it's something that as humans, as spiritual beings, having this human experience, the word debt automatically sets up resistance.
Hmm. Hmm.
But commitment gives me a different image. It gives me a different picture in my mind. And I'm more willing to keep my commitment because I'm also being true to the laws of nature. Is if you give your word, keep it.
Mm.
So I am more willing and happy to be able to meet my commitments than I am a debt. And it just showed me this morning how the laws really work together.
Yes.
Go ahead.
No. Yes. I was just saying yes.
And that to me was so freeing this morning, because even in my lending, I used to have the saying that I don't lend, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I'm not able to give it to you without expecting it back, then I'm free from holding you in debt. But that was from the wrong spirit.
Yes.
And that's what you brought out to me this morning. I am still seeing these people, or whoever is asking me for whatever, I'm seeing them in a negative way. I'm already seeing them as not being true to their word. So it just helped me all the way around this morning. And let me just share one quick thing. When Source said, "Watch me down low," watch me in the little things that I'm doing. I thought I had missed the class this morning, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then I get a message that says I'm on. And I'm like, "Where are you on? I'm looking for you." Oh, God. But for me, that was his care for me. And then I hear you say, "We got a late start this morning." And I'm like, "Okay, Source, I got a late start. But timing is relative, because I got what I was supposed to get this morning. So thank you."
Excellent. And you make a good point. The commandment to love, I overlooked that. That's why it's a commandment that we love. Okay.
Yes.
And love our neighbor as ourself, and
Yes.
loving ourselves is important. Now, when we talk about debt, when somebody owes us something, it's like we own them.
Right.
They're enslaved to us, and so we don't want to own nobody, and nobody wants to be owned. And
Exactly.
so we got to know that it's credit. And when there's a debt, there's like a contract. When there's a commitment, that's like a covenant.
Yes.
And we work through covenants and not contracts.
My
Our word, like you say, our words are our bonds, and to be able to say to someone, "I have this commitment to you, but at the present moment, I'm requesting, can I push it back a week?" Okay. When you have a debt, come on, you're supposed to make good on your debt. Right. Right. And then we all know how it feels to
get up and start running around this room.
right. Okay, good. So I appreciate you bringing that to the forefront. So, well, that's all we have this morning.